I want to open this video by saying I have no nostalgia for the year 1988 whatsoever. I have no nostalgia for this video game that you see on screen, Galaxy Force, whatsoever. And most people in the audience, most people who could possibly get interested in the topic of this video, will not be motivated by nostalgia, but by a very different and more beneficial instinct called curiosity. Do you know what this is? This is an audio cassette tape. And the arcade game you just saw, Galaxy Force, a high-end 3D arcade game, human beings attempted to program it on an audio cassette tape to play on the Commodore 64. Are you curious? Nostalgia, in as much as it applies to this situation, will only lead to disappointment. But if just hearing about that makes you curious, maybe, just maybe, you're going to get a little bit interested in Commodore 64 hardware or software in 2021. Here's a telling review from an obscure website you might have heard of, Amazon.com, titled, "Meh, What Was I Thinking?" Nostalgia wins again. I was a huge C64 fan back in the day. I had a complete system and hundreds of games, literally over 100 discs, each with multiple games. Unfortunately, my brain remembered them being a lot better than they are. I don't know what I was expecting, considering these are 8-bit graphics, but PU, these games are bad. Much more succinctly, this reviewer says, don't buy it. Games very hard to play, and don't play like you remember. Not worth it. Look at this. What the hell is this? This is an audio cassette tape with the notorious name Altered Beast emblazoned on the top. Now, Altered Beast was a terrible game in arcades to begin with. It was a terrible game on the Sega Genesis. But what a concept. Can you believe that there is an 8-bit computer version of this for the Commodore 64? Is it good? Is it enjoyable? No! It's just bizarre. You just feel like you're transported into this parallel universe where human beings worked against unbelievably limiting hardware constraints to try to achieve these impossible graphical and gameplay effects with, most of the time, just disastrous, laughable outcomes. Most of the time. Not all the time. Do you remember this game? Do you remember Xenophobe? There's a difference between something being memorable and being good, but for many of us, this was a memorable game, even if it had been awful. Oh yeah, notice down there in the fine print? Now available for your Commodore 64 cassette. Yes, that's right. And you know what? It just might be the best version of this game ever made. And it certainly, as with so many things in the Commodore 64, has the best music. Back when I was a teenager, I used to watch TV while washing dishes. And I have this memory of a debate between the two famous film critics, Siskel and Ebert. And one of them said to the other, look, this movie, it's not good enough to see in theaters, but I'd recommend people rent it on VHS cassette. And I'll always remember, Ebert argued back here and said, no, that doesn't make any sense. How can you possibly think $5 matters more than wasting 2 hours of your life? Either this is worth spending 2 hours doing, or it is not. When you are looking at Alice in Wonderland unfolding on screen here, you might feel a little bit intrigued, you might feel a little bit curious. Are you really willing to put 2 hours of your adult life into this? And even if it were just 2 hours, do you realize how much of that time might go into finicky, self-defeating struggles to get the emulator to work properly, to get the hardware or the software to work properly? It is true that in 2021, the cost of playing the entire library of Commodore 64 games has gotten shockingly close to zero, whether you're going to buy the new hardware, the C64 Mini, or whether you're going to get set up on your own computer. But, ultimately, you must value your own time much more than the mere question of how many dollars or cents you're willing to put into it.
If anyone expects just a proud recitation of the accomplishments of my administration, I say let's leave that to history. We're not finished yet.
Perhaps 3,000 video games were written for the Commodore 64. The number is so high, it's a matter of speculation. If you believed that just 10% of those games were worth playing, were a good use of your time right now in the year 2021, it would be a no-brainer. You should sign right up. You don't really believe that, do you? You don't believe it's 10%. You don't believe it's 5%. If you really stop and think about it, you're wondering, is it even 1%? How close to zero is it? Is there anything you could justify spending 5 minutes or 10 minutes playing on this unbelievably awful footnote in the history of computing? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, even if each game is only interesting for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, just have a look, just have a glance, just out of curiosity. What would it be like if someone tried to make an 8-bit version of Space Harrier, and for some reason I wasn't interested in the Sega Master System 8-bit version of Space Harrier? What would it be like if someone made an 8-bit version of Shadow Dancer, of Shinobi? On and on it goes. What if I want to have a look? Isn't it the case that this device makes it as fast and simple for me to just try them out for a few minutes or a few seconds, just as if I were taking a Nintendo or Sega cartridge and popping it into a console? No. No, it does not. This device promises to take what is already a complex and involuted hobby, adored by a tiny number of people, and make it easily accessible to the masses. And in that, it certainly fails. In order to use this device, you will need much more than the useless joystick that comes with it. The joystick is useless and yet requisite because it has an inscrutable system of 4 buttons that are neither numbered nor color-coded that you must use for all system functions. But otherwise, it is not a stick that is going to bring any joy into your life. Oh no! In order to use the Commodore 64, in addition to plugging in your own USB keyboard and your own USB hard drive and your own USB hub, because the number of ports is grossly inadequate, you'll also need multiple joysticks. Oh, and you think I was able to use this joystick? Nope. It should work on pretty much any system that you can fit a USB plug into. But mysteriously, this joystick doesn't work, whereas this one does. And no, the reason can't possibly be because of the difference between Sanwa and Hori components. So what many consumers imagine would be simple, casual entertainment is pretty soon revealed to be a horrifyingly complex, time-consuming chore.
Now you got me all cheesed off! I'm gonna play some Temple of Abshai. Forget you guys. Oh, my hit points are like inexcusable in this dungeon, man. I need to find some elixir or something.
I think curiosity is an important, positive part of adult life. We don't stop learning, and we shouldn't. We should kindle the flame of curiosity whenever it happens to come up. And in my case, I admit, I got drawn into this because I was curious about the music. Commodore 64 is home to some unbelievably awful games with just terribly primitive graphics, awful controls, video games that feel like a waste of time even when they're compared to other video games that on some intellectual level we're aware factually are a waste of our time. The music still means something to me today, and it was some of the first music I listened to as a child, shaping my taste in music before I got interested in blues, jazz, hip-hop, rap music, the other forms of music that were to define my teenage years and in some ways to haunt my adult life. When I heard that so many of the games I had known in my childhood, from Wonder Boy to Rampage to The Simpsons Arcade to Zaxxon, when I'd heard that so many games I was familiar with from other consoles did have a Commodore 64 version, I was curious. And in acting on that curiosity, the experience you have again and again is 1. Wow, it's really hard to get this loading. 2. Wow, it's really hard to get the controls to work. 3. Wow, how do I get past this option screen? 4. Oh, it doesn't work anyway. 5. Oh, do I have to do some kind of low-level hacking, some kind of command line trick to get this to work? Should I just give up? Oh, now it's finally working. And then steps 6 and 7 that follow soon thereafter, almost always, are, wow, I can't believe how unbelievably awful this is. 2, I can't imagine how disappointed children would have been when they received this brightly colored box from their parents back in 1988 and sat down to play this. And 3, I can't believe anyone imagined this was decent or passable when compared to the Sega Master System, the NES, or whatever other version it is that you're already familiar with.
Few gamers familiar with the 8-bit era will be unaware of Bubble Bobble, and the cute dinosaur / dragons Bob and Bob. It spawned a series of sequels, and the characters are probably most famous now for the Puzzle Bobble or Buster Move series. The evil Baron Von Blubber has transformed our heroes into bubble-blowing reptiles and captured their girlfriends in true 80s gaming style. So we're off to the Cave of Wonders to defeat BVB and get them back.
I laughed out loud trying to play Bubble Bobble on the Commodore 64 with my girlfriend for all of 2 minutes. 3 minutes. It probably took us 3 minutes to get through the title screens and the options to get the game running. And then I just sat there laughing and laughing because I could not believe how awful it was. And yeah, it was made funnier to me because before I bought this thing, I Googled around, I watched a few other YouTube videos, and there are all these losers on YouTube who are telling you specifically that this game is unbelievably wonderful and just in general regaling you with what a great experience it is to sit down and play these authentic Commodore 64 games on this totally inauthentic piece of garbage simulated hardware. The vast majority of games are terrible. And then depending on your sense of humor, a significant percentage of them are laugh out loud, hilariously awful. You will sit and reflect on human nature itself. You will wonder, why did human beings do this to themselves? You will wonder, what were the programmers thinking? You will wonder, what were the executives at Sega or Atari thinking? And you will wonder, what were the people who played this for so many hours as children thinking? What were their parents thinking? And it remains mind-blowing to wonder, what are these people thinking now? Because the internet is full of losers who are still pouring so many hours into this today in 2021.
Oh, my hit points are like inexcusable in this dungeon, man.
I first heard of Temple of Apshai because Strongbad made jokes about it. Strongbad, the fictional character on HomestarRunner.com, he made jokes about Temple of Apshai. That's how I heard of this game. People are unironically playing and loving this game in 2021. But, well, it's true that it's not 10% of the games on the system, and it's not 5%, and it's not even 1% of the games in the system. There are some games, for which the best version ever made is on the Commodore 64. And so now I will give you my top 10 list that is precisely 2 video games long. There are 2 video games I can tell you where the best version you could ever possibly play is on this system and nowhere else.
If you are looking for an excuse to buy this thing or to sink the time into figuring out how to use a C64 on an emulator on a computer near you, yes, I am telling you unironically, there are 2 and only 2 games that can justify your time, and both of them are 2-player, and both of them are suitable for playing for lengths of, say, 5 to 10 minutes with your girlfriend before you go back to reading Aristotle or otherwise get on to leading your highly productive life. And number 1 on that list is Arkanoid 2, the sequel to Arkanoid. This is simply the best version of the game that exists. And with absolutely zero irony, I can tell you that the Atari Soft version of Mario Brothers, yes, that's right, the Commodore 64 version that was programmed by Atari, is better than the Nintendo version, is better than the arcade version of the iconic original Mario Bros. I think curiosity is a wonderful thing, and it's important to stay curious as an adult. I don't regret being curious about this system. I don't regret doing the little bit of research into its library of software that I did. However, don't confuse curiosity with nostalgia. Nostalgia for 1988? I ain't got it, you don't want it, and if that's the road you're on, it is a road only leading to bitter disappointment, and at some point, you've got to look in the mirror and realize this is just a waste of your time.
If anyone expects just a proud recitation of the accomplishments of my administration, I say let's leave that to history. We're not finished yet.